the 58th sessions of the Commission on the Status of Women. Ghana, led by the Minister of Gender, Children and Social Protection, Honorable Nana Oye Lither, attends the 58th session of the Commission on the Status of Women at the United Nations headquarters in New York, under the theme, Challenges and Achievements in the Implementation of the Millennium Development Goals for Women and Girls. It all started on the 10th of March 2014 with the registration of delegates at the UN Accreditation Office opposite the main UN headquarters. Ghana's delegation, made up of directors from the Gender Ministry and representatives of non-governmental organizations, including parliamentarian select committees on gender, took part of the many deliberations held here at the UN headquarters during this session. At the opening ceremony, which took place at the General Assembly Hall on the 10th of March 2014, the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon indicated that the UN is committed to helping governments across the world in providing the education and quality sexual and reproductive health services that many women and adolescent girls lack. We must ensure their reproductive rights, he said. However, he did mention that the world is behind schedule when it comes to sanitation. Each year, more than 8,000 children die from diarrhea and more than 2.5 million people lack proper sanitation.
The 50th session was a global meeting, and Ghana is a member of the United Nations. So we were required to be there and to report on Ghana's achievements of the development goals as at now. It also gave the opportunity to interact with members of other countries, look at the challenges they were facing and how those challenges have been addressed. So at the main review sessions, as the statements of governments of countries came up, you could learn of the challenges. There were also side events which countries also highlighted on the various programs they've had, the challenges and their successes. So it was an opportunity to learn, also give you the opportunity to network, to interact with people from other countries, especially where you know you have a challenge. Then you can also quickly learn from them if they have a success story in those areas.
On Tuesday, the 11th of March 2014, Nana Oye Lither, Gender Minister, delivered Ghana's statement touching on the progress Ghana has made over the last 2 decades in promoting gender inequality and access to primary education. Ghana, she said, has made remarkable progress towards achieving the MDGs. She did indicate that in 2011, the prevalence of female genital cutting was 4% and early marriage 27%. On HIV, sexual and reproductive health, Honorable Gender Minister supported the adoption of social intervention that will focus on young girls and boys. Among many deliberations, Ghana took part at this year's CSW session, included high-level meetings of ECOWAS Ministers of Gender and Women Affairs at the African Union Permanent Observer Mission, 305 East 47th Street.
In Addis Ababa, there's a recommendation about including a 6th pillar, and Ghana supports this recommendation. We also believe that gender equality, women's empowerment, and women's rights should be central to a post-2015 discussion. And then also look at the whole issue of gender budgeting, look at poverty, because in assessing Ghana's implementation of the MDGs, poverty was cross-cutting, poverty was underlining. What are we doing in terms of the women's economic empowerment? We've talked about microfinance and others. In Ghana, we have only 3.7% of women who actually control and are in charge of businesses. Most of the women, over 90%, are engaged in the informal sector. and economic empowerment is critical.
At the high-level side event hosted by the UN Office of Special Advisor on Africa, UNDP, and Regional Bureau of Africa on Tuesday the 11th, March 2014, panelists discussed the perspective on MDG acceleration, the post-2015 development agenda, sustainable development goals, and the African Agenda 2063 for African women and girls. Ghana, again led by Honorable Minister of Gender, was invited to a discussion on widowhood across generation, a root cause of poverty.
We've had very fruitful discussions, and we must sustain the progress and be sensitive to the needs of widows. We have proposed some targets in the post-2015 agenda. We all belong to different countries, and when we leave this room, let's make sure that it actually happens, that we get our special rapporteur, that we get our target, that we get social protection for widows. We have started the journey and we will continue the journey. So we all have a collective role, individual role and a collective role.
On March 13th, at the Joint Office for Commonwealth Permanent Mission to the UN, Ghana participated in stakeholders' meeting on gender and procurement opportunities with Commonwealth. Honorable Minister admitted that Ghana has a procurement law in place and that she is going back home with her team to review the law to see how sensitive and how to work with the procurement authority to have more women being part of the procurement chain.
Of making sure that women are able to join the supply chain in terms of procurement, and then they can also make some money. So this is what, for me, this is what economic empowerment is all about. Because in Ghana we have a procurement law, and now we have come here and listened. We're going to go back to review to find out the extent to which it is gender sensitive and how we can work with our procurement authority to ensure that we have more women also competing or also being part of the procurement process. I'm very grateful that you invited me to come here. This is something we're going to add to the list to our to-do list in our Ministry of Gender and Women.
One of the main highlights of this year's 58th session of the Commission on the Status of Women is Ghana's side event in Conference Room D on assessing Ghana's implementation of the MDGs, best practices, opportunities, challenges, and the way forward. The Gender Minister introduced her ministry first, then went on to do her presentation, after which the Director General of Ghana AIDS Commission also, among others, did a presentation on the Commission.
So I'll start by welcoming you all. Thank you for coming to Ghana's side event at the 58th session of the United Nations. I'll be presenting on poverty, the extent to which we have been able to achieve goal number 1 of the MDGs. But first, let me introduce our ministry. So our ministry is the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection, and our vision is to create a harmonious society in Ghana where survival of the sexes, children, and vulnerable persons are guaranteed. So we want to achieve gender equality and equity in Ghana, and these are our target groups. Children, and who represent 38% of our population. Those who live below the poverty line, they represent 28%. Men, persons with disability, 3% of our population, the elderly 6.7%, and then women 51.3% of our population. So Ghana adopted a strategy of mainstreaming the Millennium Development Goals into our medium-term development policy framework. And from 2003, we have had several development frameworks. We started with the Ghana Poverty Reduction Strategy, and then we have ended with the Ghana Shared Growth and Development Agenda. So generally, what are the interventions government has put in place to address the poverty indices? What we've done is to implement social protection interventions. And one key intervention that is being managed by our ministry is the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty social protection intervention, where we give cash grants of about $20 to $30 to the last quintile of poor people. So we're serving 74,000 households, translating into 232,000 persons in Ghana across 99 districts in Ghana.
Dr. Angela L. Adas said the country was working at providing preventable interventions as well as comprehensive sexual education to the most vulnerable, that included women and the youth.
I think Ghana's presentation today was very comprehensive, and it was able to really deal with all the issues that are expected, looking into the discussions that are leading to post-2015.
I was very pleased to be able to attend Ghana's session. It was very interesting. I'm affiliated with the University of Johannesburg. It's always interesting to hear what's happening.
After the minister was briefed on issues discussing other deliberations attended by the directors of the ministry, it came out that Ghana stood up when the issue of family planning came up, and therefore Minister Oyelither asked them to state Ghana's position on family planning.
We'll state our position. We'll state our position. This is what our law says. This is what our health policy says. We have a reproductive health policy. We have a framework under the Ministry of Health and Ghana Health Service. But then go with the African group position. So at least it's documented that this is what we have. And then we want strong language on social protection.
Minister hosted the South African Minister on Women, Children, and People with Disabilities, where they discussed issues on collaborations. Here in their discussions centered on issues like gender-based violence, where Minister Oyelither acknowledged South Africa's achievements rates, which stand at 60% as compared to Ghana, which stands at 1%. Therefore, Ghana can learn a lot from South Africa.
The agreed conclusions of the 58th session of the UN Commission on the Status of Women came after a very hectic time and negotiations. The 58th session reaffirmed the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action. It also reaffirmed its position on all forms of discrimination against women. It acknowledged the important role that governments across the globe have played in the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals, even though some of the goals are lacking behind. The achievements were acknowledged and countries urged to double up in areas where they are lacking before 2015. It also looked at the commitment to gender equality and the empowerment of women. Because several years after the UN had taken decisions on this, no country had fully attained these things. One of the issues which the agreed conclusion also addressed was care work and services, paid or unpaid. And I welcome the commitment of governments towards the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals. There were several issues, looking at maternal health, adolescent health, looking at gender-based violence, looking at how women can be taken out of poverty, looking at issues of sanitation, especially for girls in schools. We also looked at access to finance for women, among so many other issues.